Digging in the Dirt with Dr. David Lipovich.
Welcome to Episode 4 of Digging in the Dirt, entitled The Ascent of Man. As most people nowadays are aware, our species, Homo sapiens, has its roots in Africa. The earliest known Homo sapiens remains in the world are two skeletons from the Homo site in southwestern Ethiopia, excavated by Richard Leakey and others between 1969 and 1974. These early remains have been dated to approximately 195,000 years ago. It is based on these finds that the suggested cradle of our species is in Ethiopia. The earliest evidence for our human ancestors in the Near East comes from the site of Singa. Singa is in Sudan, so it too is in Africa, but it is in that portion of northeast Africa that includes the later area known as Nubia, which is traditionally considered part of the Near East. The site is famous for the discovery in 1924 of the Singa skull. The skull is dated to 160,000 years ago. Nearly as old as the find from Singa is the cave at Eshul on the slopes of Mount Carmel near Haifa, Israel, which was first investigated between 1929 and 1935. The cave yielded the remains of 10 early Homo sapiens, 7 adults and 3 children, dated using 2 different scientific dating techniques, electron spin resonance and thermoluminescence dating. Thermoluminescence dating works by measuring the accumulated radiation dose in a material containing crystalline minerals from either their heating in a fire, as in a fired piece of pottery, or their exposure to sunlight, as in a stone tool sitting on the surface of the ground, and from that calculating the time elapsed. This is done by heating the material in a lab. The heated sample then gives off a weak light signal proportional to the radiation dose, which can then be measured. Electron spin resonance, on the other hand, can be used to date materials such as teeth, shell, or stone by measuring the amount of free radicals in the material caused by exposure to natural background radiation over a long period of time. Using these methods, the site at Eshul was dated to between 80,000 and 120,000 years ago. Alongside the remains were found artifacts including marine shell beads that were not local to the region. This is our first evidence for early long-distance trade. The skeletal remains from the site show characteristics of both early modern humans, like a smaller brain case, because believe it or not, Neanderthals, the stereotypical caveman, actually had bigger brains than we do, and of Neanderthals, like heavy brow ridges and a forward-thrusting jaw. It is thought that these early modern humans came to the Levant from Africa around 125,000 years ago, probably via the Sinai Peninsula as part of an initial wave of human emigration from Africa. While it is possible that Neanderthals and early modern humans coexisted in the Near East from around 122,000 to 90,000 years ago, it is unlikely that they interacted and less likely that they interbred. It is thought that this particular line of early humans died out and was replaced in the Near East by a later second wave of emigrants from Africa. Almost as ancient as the finds from Eshul were those made at Kafsa, a rock shelter in the lower Galilee of Israel, first excavated by René Neuville in 1934. The remains of 15 individual early modern humans, 7 adults and 8 children, were recovered. The lower layers of the site were dated to 92,000 years ago using thermoluminescence dating, and between 96 and 115,000 years ago using electron spin resonance dating. They included the remains of a series of hearths or fireplaces, several graves, animal bones, and marine shells brought from the Mediterranean coast, as well as stone tools and lumps of red ochre, a naturally occurring red pigment that looks remarkably like dried blood. As the climate cooled erratically between 135,000 and 90,000 years ago, tropical Africa suffered severe droughts which drove people towards the seashores and eventually to crossing into Arabia. Such a crossing became possible when sea levels had fallen, exposing much of the shelf between southern Eritrea and Yemen, called the Bab el-Mandab, narrowing this strait to about 11 kilometers at its narrowest during the beginning of the most recent glacial period, approximately 110,000 years ago. The Arabian Peninsula at this time was much wetter than today and supported lush vegetation. A subsequent interglacial period would have made it impossible to return to Africa as the sea levels rose again. You can see here what that strait looks like today, with the Red Sea to the north, Eritrea to the west, and Yemen to the east. Evidence for this early occupation of the Arabian Peninsula has only recently begun to come to light as a result of a new interest by archaeologists in the region. At Jebel Fayat in the United Arab Emirates, a team of archaeologists in 2011 found evidence for 3 different Paleolithic occupations dating to from 125,000 to 34,000 years ago. At Aibut al-Awwal in the Dhofar region of Oman, more than 100 surface scatters of stone tools and the waste from their production were discovered in 2011 belonging to the late Nubian complex, known previously only from Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia. The site has been dated by its excavators to about 96,000 years ago. The finds at such sites suggest that some early Homo sapiens left Africa via the Bab el-Mandab Strait that lies between Yemen and Africa and found their way to eastern Arabia. As I alluded to earlier, it is assumed that this initial wave of early humans from Africa was ultimately not very successful and largely died out. Sometime between 69,000 and 70,000 years ago, a supervolcano at the site of present-day Lake Toba in Sumatra, Indonesia, erupted in one of the largest volcanic events known. Here you can see the massive lake which sits in the crater or caldera created by its explosion. The resulting ash and greenhouse gases likely resulted in a global winter of at least 6 to 10 years, which may have had lasting events on the climate of the Near East for as much as 1,000 years. It has been suggested that the resulting ecological disaster dramatically culled the population of Homo sapiens down to as low as 3,000 to 10,000 individuals worldwide, creating a genetic bottleneck. This may have accelerated differentiation within the smaller human population, resulting in the evolution in Africa of our direct ancestors. The dominant view among scholars is that all modern non-Africans are descended from a single group that left Africa somewhere between 70 and 50,000 years ago after this volcanic cataclysm. It is believed that one of the things which made this second dispersal from Africa possible was the development of a subsistence strategy based on the collection of resources from the intertidal zone, the transitional region between land and sea, between the upper limit of high tides and the lower limit of low tides. So effectively, our earliest sort of directly related ancestors were beachcombers. It is believed that these newer, more evolved humans left Africa and crossed into Asia and Europe via the Bab el-Mandab Strait. It has been estimated that from a population of 2,000 to 5,000 individuals in Africa, only a small group, possibly as few as 150 people, crossed the Red Sea. In our next episode, entitled On the Hunt, we will see the developments in the Near East as the Old Stone Age or Paleolithic comes to an end and we enter into the era of the Epi-Paleolithic.
If you are enjoying digging in the dirt and would like to help us continue to produce more episodes, please spread the word about our series and send us a small gratuity to show your support using the following link, tinyurl.com/3rxdkvt4.